Good morning, friends of Wildfire. This is Darren Clable, your South Dakota State Fire Meteorologist. Today is May 1st, 2026. It is May Day, my friends. We're bringing in May. This is your 2026 South Dakota Wildland Fire Potential Outlook. We'll look at some conditions going into the spring and the summer month and try to figure out what's going to happen. Let's just take a brief look at our primary fire season drivers with respect to the climate conditions for the months of June, July, and August. Now, this is primarily for western South Dakota, but you could consider central South Dakota to be part of this as well. When it comes to fires in June and July, drought is pretty critical. If we don't have drought, fields are too green, we can't burn them. Also above average temperatures during that month and even prior to that month, so kind of a nice period of warm conditions as well. And then short and long-term precipitation deficits. When I say short-term precipitation deficits, I'm talking in that 10 to 20 day time frame. When I'm talking more long-term, I'm talking 1 to 3 months or even 1 to 6 months in terms of those precip deficits. When we get to August, if we've had a hot summer, we don't need drought in August necessarily to get big fires. We just need those short-term precipitation deficits to bring a lot of fire. And so that's kind of the conditions that we're going to be looking forward to or looking to forecast for here on May 1st to see what our fire seasons are going to bring. Here is our percent of normal precipitation over the past 12 months across the greater United States. You can see that parts of the Rocky Mountains have been exceptionally dry. Parts of the Cascades have been exceptionally dry. And then, of course, kind of southern Appalachia going into the southeastern part of the United States has also been really dry. There's been some wet spots. If I look at northern South Dakota, look at that. Above average precipitation. They've been doing all right up there. But anywhere really in the south half of South Dakota, it's been quite a bit drier. Speaking of South Dakota, let's zoom in a little bit. Again, this is over the past 12 months. And really, if we draw a line kind of through the center of the state, everything south of there has been drier than average. Everything north of there has been wetter than average over the past 12 months. Zooming in a little bit closer temporally, we're looking at now the past 90 days across South Dakota. On the left is percent of normal precipitation. On the right is the actual departure. So the units on the right are going to be in inches. First, I want to point out the map on the left. Over the past 90 days, nearly everywhere has seen extraordinarily dry conditions in South Dakota. I mean, if you look at southwestern South Dakota, inclusive of the Black Hills, you're looking at anywhere from 30 to 55% of average precipitation over those past 90 days. Southeastern South Dakota is really kind of the same boat. I mean, very, very dry. And this time of the year, we're starting to pick up, historically more moisture. And so these deficits are starting to add up. If we look at the overall numbers across the Black Hills, we're looking at anywhere from kind of 1.5 to 3.25 inches of deficit precipitation over these 90 days. And that's kind of the same story over southeastern South Dakota. And again, it's been extraordinarily dry. Not only has it been extraordinarily dry, but it's been extraordinarily warm. This is our departure from normal temperature over the same past 90-day time frame. I want to direct your attention to down here. This is 90 days. Okay, averaged out. We're looking at 4 to 8, 9 degrees above average over a 90-day period. This is really unprecedented heat. And to put this even more into historical context, this is the divisional average temperature for the combined months of January, February, and March. Okay, so think of it as the past, the first 3 months of the year. What I want to point out is that all of these climate divisions that you see in red experienced their warmest January through March on record. And this is a record dating back 132 years. This is extreme warmth, like unprecedented extreme warmth. And that does include kind of the southwestern part of South Dakota as well. And then look at the other oranges. Hey, you're just well above average, right? So you're talking very, very warm conditions. And what that has done is it's dried our fuels out. It's made everything susceptible to burn. And we've had one of the worst spring fire seasons on record in the central and northern Great Plains. The other thing that it's done is it's allowed the snowpack to disappear across the western United States. Now, this is the snow water equivalent on April 1st of this year. So snow water equivalent is basically if you melt down all of the snow in these basins, you look at how much water was in there, and then you compare it to historical averages. The greater Rocky Mountains are looking at anywhere from 10 to 50% of average snow water equivalent. So we're saying that there's no snowpack in the mountains. That's really what this map is showing. And April 1st is when snowpack typically peaks in the mountains. That's why I picked this graph. I didn't cherry pick it. It hasn't improved since then. But just typically we see April 1st as being peak snowpack in the mountains of the western United States. Northern Rockies a little bit better, but still kind of well below average. But yeah, we're in a tough place for water in the western United States. And it's really been an issue over the past, like I said, 90 days, right? If we look at the U.S. Drought Monitor back from December 9th, compared to our Drought Monitor, which was released yesterday, the drought's really increased over the greater western United States, and that's inclusive of South Dakota, right? Very dry conditions, and it's just, there's just no water out there, right? There's no water in the mountains. It's an unfortunate situation, and it doesn't get any better outside of South Dakota when it comes to the western United States. Looking at our 9-week change in the U.S. Drought Monitor, it really just shows that this has been kind of more of a flash drought. It's really been an increasing drought as we've come into, unfortunately, the more wet spring months, which that precipitation's not really materialized yet. So this is kind of a busy graph, but on the very left-hand bottom is the start of the year, January 1st, and then we extend all the way through basically today. Data comes through yesterday. The brown line you see represents average precipitation for Rapid City, and then the green line represents year-to-date precipitation, so what we've actually seen in terms of precipitation. First thing I'll point out to you is on the very right-hand side, basically precip yesterday, on average, we see just shy of 4 inches accumulated by April 30th. This year, we've got 1.75 inches, right? So that puts us 38% of our average precipitation year-to-date here in Rapid City. So the bigger distance you see between these two lines means it's really, really dry. Even the precipitation we got last week, it boosted us up a little bit, but it was more or less about average for this time of the year. In order to make up the deficit, we need to see above average, even well above average precipitation. Same kind of chart for Custer. You know, they're sitting at about 50% of average precipitation in Custer for the time of the year. They picked up some moisture again over the past couple of weeks, but you'll see that, you know, when all the big fires in the Custer area were going on, there was big precipitation deficits. And kind of the worst place in South Dakota, as far as I see it, is the Pine Ridge. Extraordinary, extreme dryness down there, right? They've gotten an inch of precip, averaging nearly 4 inches of precip. So they're shooting 25 to 30% of average in terms of year-to-date precipitation down on the Pine Ridge area. So southwestern South Dakota is really kind of the epicenter for the dryness. Southeastern South Dakota isn't much better. Let's look at some near-term weather. If I look at the 1 to 7 day precipitation forecast, mind you, this is for the first week in May. This is saying no rain. At least, really, no big chances of rain. Maybe a splash of moisture over the Black Hills, but this is really kind of I don't know how to feel when I look at this map. It kind of makes me sad, to be honest with you. First week in May, and we can't even get a thunderstorm or anything like that. Looking at our 8 to 14 day outlook. So now we're stretching May 8th out to May 14th. High probabilities of above average temperatures, high probabilities of below average precipitation now extending through the middle of May. Now this is even more troubling because May and June are our 2 wettest months. If we're not picking up moisture now, it's going to put us in a bad place for peak fire season in July in western South Dakota. The overall May outlook, so this was issued just yesterday, again, you know, trending towards above average temperatures and below average precipitation. The heat looks to be focused over the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies, but again, warmer than average and drier than average conditions are expected in bulk here in the month of May. Let's look at our outlook for kind of late spring through early fall. Here's the outlook for May through July. Now, I do want to caveat that this product is issued the middle of the month. So this product is a couple of weeks old. I think this data is still valid. We're looking at high probabilities of above average temperatures across South Dakota, and we're leaning towards below average precipitation. And again, I want to point out that the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies region is going to be in a tough place going into the summer. The signal up there is pretty strong for warmer than average and drier than average conditions. If we extend this out from July to September, again, these maps were made on April 16th. The western United States, largely warmer than average conditions. Same with Alaska. But I want to point out that Alaska gets above average precipitation. The Northern Rockies still maintain this below average precipitation, kind of the central and southern Great Plains. Some signals for below average precipitation. Across South Dakota, there's really not a strong signal for above or below average precipitation during these months. But there is a strong signal for above average precipitation over the Four Corners region. This is really monsoonal moisture. So we are expecting an above average monsoon across the desert Southwest this summer, really driven by the hot temperatures. The Southwest monsoon is driven by hot temperatures over the Southwest. What that monsoonal moisture actually does is it can bring some moisture into South Dakota. However, that's typically mid-level moisture. It's not like super good rain. It can bring us lightning. So this to me is actually telling me that we might, I caveat this, might have the opportunity for some additional dry lightning or mixed wet dry lightning throughout the summer months. So we're looking warmer than average. We've been in drought. Drought's likely to continue. Now I'm starting to think about ignition potential going into the summer months. And with an increased monsoon over the Southwest, that might bring us more lightning this summer. I do want to caveat the predictions for above average temperatures with the fact that decadal trends have suggested over the past 30 years, 35 years, that our temperatures across the United States are increasing. And so if we're looking at a forecast of above average temperatures this summer, it's compared to a period of record from 1990 to 2020. And so to say that we're going to have above average temperatures is almost following those decadal trends. But this summer that signal's a little bit stronger. And of course, our seasonal drought outlook, this was issued yesterday, April 30th, and drought's persisting and or expanding across all of the western United States. I'll just leave it at that. That paints the picture right there. So my overall summary, kind of my forecast, my outlook, current drought. We are in drought. Drought is expected to persist. The average precipitation we should get in May across a lot of South Dakota's ballpark 3/4 of an inch of precipitation per week. If we don't get 3/4 of an inch of precip a week, we're falling further behind. We need to be getting an inch and a half to be making up ground, right? But remember, the signal's pretty strong to be a dry May. Definitely strong signal for dryness over the next 2 weeks. The last 2 weeks of May look to be dry as well. Shaping up to be a very hot summer across much of the United States. We're shifting into a El Nino pattern, which means global temperatures are going to be warmer than average. There's no strong signal on precipitation in South Dakota. However, science is telling me that we might have a little bit better opportunity for dry lightning this summer, mixed wet dry lightning. And of course, we have our widespread western United States snow drought. Remember back to that snow water equivalent map, there's no water in the western U.S. So overall, it's going to be a long fire season. It's been a long fire season already. Take the breather in May when we can get it, but just expect a long fire season ahead of us for the summer months. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out anytime. Again, this video is going to be posted on YouTube. I do have some other training videos on there. I'll be posting forecasts and other training videos as the summer progresses. Have a great season out there. Stay safe. Get some rest here in the near term. Likely going to be a busy year.